He bought a Galactic cruiser no one attended the auction for. The interior hid a terrifying secret. He lived in a tiny settlement on a space station orbiting a dead moon. The station was old, with broken walkways and flickering lights, but it was cheap, and Jack needed a place to stay. He worked as a salvager, buying broken ships and selling their parts. It was not glamorous, but it paid enough to survive. One morning, Jack checked the Galactic auction feed. Most of the items were new ships, weapons, or valuable minerals. He was not interested. Then he saw something that made him pause. An old Galactic cruiser, massive and covered in dust, was listed for auction. The auction had almost no bidders. The description said it was abandoned, cursed, and dangerous. Most aliens avoided it. Even humans rarely cared. Jack felt a spark of curiosity. He liked fixing things. He liked finding treasures where others saw only junk. He clicked on the auction details. The ship had once belonged to a powerful galactic alliance. It was used in a great war against a mysterious enemy that no one spoke about anymore. Then the logs said it had been lost. Nobody knew why, and the ship had been left drifting in the void for decades. Jack rubbed his chin. The auction price was low, almost nothing. He checked his credits. He could afford it easily. His gut told him this was risky, but his mind said there was value. Maybe it could be sold for parts. Maybe it could be repaired. Maybe it held secrets worth more than anyone imagined. He decided to bid. The auction started. Aliens hovered around, but few showed interest. The bidding was slow, almost empty. Jack watched carefully. The price barely moved. Finally, he raised his bid one last time. The auction ended. He won. He had bought the Galactic cruiser no one else wanted. The station officials gave him the coordinates. They warned him one last time. This ship is dangerous. Many crews tried to claim it. None returned. Enter at your own risk. Jack smiled politely. He did not fear much. Fear had never helped him fix a broken engine or survive a tough salvage mission. He prepared his small shuttle, packed tools, food, and a few spare parts, and set course for the cruiser. As he approached, the ship loomed large against the black of space. It was enormous, much bigger than any ship Jack had ever seen. Its metal surface was scratched and scarred. Some parts glowed faintly, but most were dark. It drifted silently, as if waiting. Jack felt a strange chill, but he told himself it was just excitement. He docked carefully. The docking bay was enormous, bigger than his shuttle by 100 times. He opened the airlock. The inside smelled old and cold. Dust floated in weak light. The floor had deep scratches, and the walls had marks that looked like claws or hands. Jack's heart beat faster, but he stepped inside. Curiosity was stronger than fear. The lights flickered as he walked. Some panels still worked, some were dead. He tested the power systems. A faint hum came to life. Computers flickered. The ship responded slowly, like a giant waking from sleep. Jack smiled. "Not bad for an old ship," he whispered. He explored further. Hallways were wide, some rooms had debris, some had strange objects he did not recognize. Consoles were covered in alien symbols. He tried pressing buttons, but most were locked. He found old storage rooms with broken crates and faded markings. Some crates contained food, water, and tools from decades ago. Others had nothing. As he walked deeper, he heard faint sounds. At first, he thought it was the ship settling. Then he realized it was more than that. Faint whispers, almost like voices, came through the air vents. He paused. "Hello," he called softly. Nothing answered, only the faint echoes of his own voice. He shook his head. His mind tried to explain it. Wind through vents, old pipes, space, dust settling. He moved on. Some rooms were sealed. Old security doors blocked his path. He tried overriding them with his tools. Some responded, some did not. He found one room with a broken window looking into a massive chamber. Inside, shadows moved strangely. Jack could not see clearly, but he felt eyes watching. He backed away slowly. The feeling of being watched grew stronger. He reached the bridge. It was empty but massive. Chairs floated in zero gravity and consoles blinked weakly. Old star charts glowed faintly. He touched one. The map showed star systems no one talked about anymore. Many were marked with warnings: danger, quarantine, lost. Jack's curiosity grew. This ship had history, secrets, and stories buried in metal and circuits. Jack decided to restore the main power. He followed old maintenance tunnels, rewiring circuits, bypassing damaged nodes, and slowly bringing life back to the ship. Lights brightened, engines hummed, and alarms that had slept for decades started to beep softly. He felt proud. He had done this before, but nothing like this. The ship was huge, almost alive. That night, as he rested in a small sleeping chamber he found, he thought about the warnings. Cursed, abandoned, dangerous. He laughed softly. Humans always survived things others feared. If aliens could not handle it, maybe humans could. He was not afraid, not yet. But as he slept, strange things happened. The ship's corridors shifted slightly. Doors he had checked before now seemed different. Soft whispers filled the air again. He felt a pressure in his mind like something was testing him. Jack stirred, but he did not wake fully. He had survived harsh space storms, pirate attacks, and derelict ships before. He could survive this. The next morning, he continued exploring. He found a storage room with strange alien equipment. Some looked like weapons, some like containers for living creatures. One container glowed faintly. He could not open it. It hummed softly. Curiosity burned in him, but he also felt a strange warning. He backed away. Some things, he thought, were not meant to be touched. He spent days exploring, repairing, and learning the ship. Each day, the whispers grew louder. Some lights blinked in patterns, almost like messages. He began to record everything, writing notes about the ship's layout, strange symbols, and odd sounds. He noticed patterns, rooms that seemed to change, doors that were not where they should be. He realized the ship was not just a machine, it was something more, something aware. Jack did not panic. Humans were clever, adaptable, and stubborn. He trusted his mind and skills. He began to plan. If the ship held secrets, he would find them. If it held danger, he would survive it. And if it held treasure, he would claim it. But deep inside the cruiser, something watched him. Something that had waited decades for a visitor. It sensed curiosity, intelligence, and a will that was not easy to break. It stirred in its hidden chamber, feeding on the fear it smelled in the air and learning about the human who dared to enter. Jack had no idea what was coming. The ship was not empty. It was a prison, a warning, and a test. And he was about to face the first trial. Jack spent the first few days just learning the ship. He walked through empty halls, fixed broken lights, and listened to the soft hum of engines coming back to life. But after a while, he began to notice things he could not explain. Doors that were closed yesterday were open today. Hallways seemed longer or shorter than before. He would turn a corner and feel as if someone had passed just ahead, but when he looked, no one was there. One night, as he rested in a small sleeping chamber, he heard a voice. It was soft, almost like a whisper, and it spoke in a language he did not know. The voice repeated a single word over and over. He froze, listening. The sound was not coming from speakers or computers. It was inside the air, inside the walls, almost inside his head. He shook his head, thinking it was his imagination. But the voice returned every time he closed his eyes. The next day, Jack decided to investigate. He followed the whispers to a maintenance corridor. The walls were lined with old panels and wires. The voice seemed louder here. He pressed a button on a console, trying to access logs, and suddenly the screen flickered to life. Old recordings played, mostly static, but he could hear fragments of alien speech. Voices spoke of fear, of failure, of death. The recordings ended abruptly. He copied the logs to his data pad. The more he listened, the more he learned. The ship had belonged to a great galactic alliance that fought an unknown enemy. The crew had been terrified. Messages spoke of monsters, of something that could take control of minds, something that could destroy entire civilizations. The Alliance had tried to destroy it, but it was too powerful. Instead, they trapped it inside the ship and abandoned it. Jack felt a chill. He looked around the empty corridor. The ship was huge, but he now knew it was more than metal and circuits. It was a prison, and something inside was alive. He tried to shake off the fear. Humans had survived worse. He had survived worse. He told himself he could handle it. Over the next few days, Jack explored more of the ship. He found rooms filled with strange equipment. Some looked like containment units, others like weapons. He tried to understand what each piece was for. Some hummed with faint energy. One container glowed faintly in a dark room. When he approached it, the air felt colder. The whispers grew louder. Jack took a step back. Something was inside, something waiting. He did not open it, but he recorded its location and condition. He began to notice the ship itself was reacting to him. Hallways would shift. Doors would open when he was near, close when he moved away. He thought about aliens he had met before, creatures who could sense fear or intent. Maybe the ship had some kind of mind. Maybe it was alive. He tested it by leaving a tool in a hallway. When he returned, it had moved. The realization made him uneasy but not afraid. He was careful, aware, and ready to act. One evening, he reached the ship's bridge again. This time, he tried to access the main computer. The system was old, corrupted, and full of errors, but he was persistent. Lines of code ran across the screen. Some were in alien language, some in numbers. He found old security logs. They told stories of crew members locking themselves in rooms, of decks being sealed to stop something spreading. The last log ended with screams. Jack leaned back in his chair. He felt the weight of history pressing on him. The crew had fought something terrible. He had no idea what it was, but he now knew he was not alone. Something in the ship was watching, learning, and maybe waiting for him to make a mistake. He decided to test the ship further. He went to the engine room, a massive space filled with humming power cores and broken machinery. He reactivated systems slowly, carefully. As the engines began to hum, the whispers returned, louder this time. They were not words he could understand, but they carried emotion. Fear, anger, hunger. Jack felt a shiver run down his spine. The ship was alive in some way, and it was aware of him. He tried to communicate. He spoke aloud, telling whatever was there that he meant no harm. "I'm just here to fix things," he said. The whispers paused for a moment. Then they returned, repeating the same sound as before. He realized it was not a language, it was a call, a signal. Something inside the ship was responding to him. Days passed. Jack worked tirelessly. He repaired lights, rewired circuits, and stabilized the power cores. He slept little, but he learned more about the ship than anyone had in decades. He discovered hidden rooms, storage bays filled with supplies, and old living quarters. Some rooms were sealed too tightly to open. He suspected they contained the secret he had been warned about. One night he had a dream. He was walking through the ship, but the hallways were endless. Shadows moved at the edges of his vision. Whispers called his name. He ran, but the corridors shifted, twisting and stretching. He woke with a start, heart racing. The dream felt real. He touched the walls and floors. Everything was normal, but the feeling of being watched remained. He realized the ship was testing him. It had waited decades for someone with curiosity, intelligence, and courage. Most aliens would have fled or been destroyed. Humans were different. Jack understood this. He had survived harsh conditions, pirate attacks, and empty voids of space. He had survived because he did not panic, because he thought, and because he acted. The ship had found that he was a human, and humans were dangerous in ways it had never faced. Over time, Jack began to map the ship. He recorded every hallway, room, and system. He noticed patterns in the whispers. They grew louder near certain areas, faded in others. He marked the strongest signals on his map. One area in the deepest core of the ship seemed almost like a heartbeat. He could feel it in his chest when he was near. He decided to investigate. He prepared tools, protective gear, and recording devices. He would explore the core, even though the whispers warned him not to. Fear was natural, but it would not control him. He reminded himself that humans were clever, stubborn, and strong. He was all three. As he moved toward the core, the ship seemed to react. Hallways stretched longer, doors closed behind him, and shadows shifted at the edges of his vision. He felt pressure in his mind, as if something was testing his thoughts. He focused on breathing, on his senses, and on the task. He could not let the ship or its secret intimidate him. He reached a massive security door. It was old but reinforced with alien technology. Symbols glowed faintly. He used his tools to bypass the lock slowly. Sparks flew, panels beeped, and the door finally hissed open. Inside was a chamber unlike any he had seen. It was dark, except for a faint glow from a large container in the center. The whispers were strongest here. Jack felt a cold rush, as if something had been waiting decades just to see him. He approached the container cautiously. It hummed with energy, but he could not see inside. The air felt heavy, the temperature dropped, and the whispers became voices. They were not angry. They were curious, probing, learning about him. Jack realized this was the secret the crew had feared. Whatever was inside the container was not just dangerous. It was intelligent. It was alive, and it had been trapped here for decades, waiting. Jack stepped back and recorded everything. He could not open the container yet. He needed time, tools, and a plan. But he understood one thing clearly: the ship had chosen him. It had tested his mind, his courage, and his human will. He had passed the first trials, but the real challenge was only beginning. He left the chamber and sealed it again. The whispers faded but did not disappear. He returned to his sleeping quarters and wrote notes, sketches, and observations. The ship was alive, and the secret inside was waiting. Jack was determined. Humans survived when others failed. He would learn the ship's secrets and face whatever waited in the core. The ship drifted silently in space, massive and powerful. Decades of history, fear, and danger slept inside its walls. And Jack Carter, a quiet human salvager, had just begun to uncover the first layer of a secret that could change the galaxy forever. Jack could not stop thinking about the core chamber. Every moment he spent on the ship, he felt it calling him, pulling him closer. The whispers were louder now, no longer soft echoes but voices that seemed to circle his mind. He could feel something alive behind the walls, something old, something hungry. He tried to ignore it, but curiosity burned stronger than fear. He had to know what was inside. He prepared himself carefully. Tools, protective gear, energy shields, and recording devices were all ready. He had mapped every hallway, every door, every obstacle between him and the core chamber. Nothing would stop him. He reminded himself that humans were strong, clever, and stubborn. He had survived worse than whispers and shadows. As he walked through the shifting corridors, he noticed the ship reacting more aggressively. Doors would slam behind him. Lights flickered wildly. The hum of the engines pulsed like a heartbeat, growing louder with every step. Jack felt a pressure on his mind, as if someone or something was testing his thoughts. He focused on breathing, on each step, on keeping his mind clear. Fear was natural, but it could not control him. He finally reached the massive, reinforced door. It was covered in alien symbols, some glowing, some dark. The whispers were almost deafening. Jack took a deep breath and started bypassing the locks. Sparks flew, panels beeped, and the door slowly opened with a hiss that echoed through the empty halls. Inside, the chamber was enormous, far bigger than he had imagined. In the center was the container. It glowed faintly, pulsing as if alive. The air was thick and cold. Jack felt a wave of fear wash over him, but he did not step back. He approached cautiously, examining the container. Strange symbols covered it, warnings in languages he could not read. The glow shifted, showing patterns that almost looked like eyes watching him. He touched the container lightly. A surge of energy ran through his hand, and suddenly he felt it. A presence inside the container, powerful and ancient. It was intelligent. It was aware of him. It whispered in his mind, not with words but with feelings. Fear, hunger, curiosity. It was testing him, learning him. Jack realized this was what the Alliance had feared so many years ago. The logs had not told the full story. This was not just a dangerous weapon. It was a living creature, a hive-mind entity that fed on fear and could control weaker beings. Entire civilizations had fallen to it. It could manipulate minds, destroy fleets, and spread terror faster than any weapon. The Alliance had trapped it here because they could not destroy it. And now, after decades of waiting, it had a visitor. Jack's heart raced, but he stayed calm. He had to. Humans survived by thinking, by acting, by refusing to give up. He studied the container, looking for weaknesses, ways to contain it if it tried to break free. The ship hummed around him, reacting to every movement, every thought. It seemed to be both a prison and a protector. It wanted the creature inside to remain trapped, and it wanted to see if he was capable. He remembered the stories from the logs. Crews had sealed entire decks, sacrificed sections of the ship, and even killed themselves to keep the creature contained. Jack understood why. The entity was powerful, intelligent, and dangerous beyond imagining. But he also realized something else. Humans were different. They did not panic. They did not submit easily, and this creature had never faced a human before. Jack began setting up a containment plan. He used energy shields, reinforced panels, and old alien tech he found on the ship. He rewired systems to create barriers, slow the creature's influence, and monitor its activity. Every adjustment made the whispers louder. The creature was aware of his efforts, testing him, probing him. Jack felt pressure in his mind, trying to resist suggestions he could not hear. He focused, blocking it, and worked faster. Suddenly, a shadow moved inside the chamber. It was not a physical shadow, but a presence, a dark pulse in the air. The glow in the container flickered, and a scream echoed inside Jack's head. It was not a sound of voice, but of pure terror. He stumbled, but did not fall. He realized the creature was trying to scare him, to break his mind, as it had done with countless others. He gritted his teeth and continued. Humans could feel fear, but they could also fight through it. He activated the containment shields. The energy pulse created a barrier around the container, shimmering and humming. The creature thrashed against it, testing the limits, trying to reach through. Jack felt waves of emotion, rage, hunger, and despair. He almost panicked, but he forced himself to stay calm. He knew he could not let it out. The galaxy could not survive it. Hours passed. Jack worked tirelessly, adjusting power flows, reinforcing shields, and monitoring the creature's activity. The ship itself seemed to help him, responding to his commands, opening pathways, and stabilizing systems. He realized the ship was alive too, not in the same way as the creature, but in a way that wanted to keep it trapped. The Alliance had designed the ship not just to carry the creature, but to guard it, and now it had chosen a new keeper. Finally, he paused to rest. He recorded every detail, every reaction, every strange pulse from the container. He tried to communicate with the creature. He sent thoughts of calm, of understanding. The whispers eased slightly. He realized it was listening, learning, not just attacking. He was the first human it had met, and it did not know how to handle him. He remembered the warnings: cursed, abandoned, dangerous. Now he understood. It was cursed because of the creature. It was abandoned because no one wanted to face the terror inside. It was dangerous because it had ended entire fleets and civilizations. And yet here he was. Alone, human, alive, he felt a sense of pride. Humans had survived again where others failed. He decided he needed more time. He could not destroy the creature, and he could not release it. The containment was stable for now, but he needed to strengthen it. He explored more of the ship, looking for additional systems, hidden rooms, and old Alliance tech. He found more logs, more warnings, more evidence of what the creature could do. He recorded everything, knowing that if he survived, the galaxy needed to know. As he worked, he noticed the ship changing subtly. Hallways aligned differently, lights glowed in patterns, and the whispers seemed coordinated. He realized the ship itself was alive, working with him, testing him, and protecting the galaxy in its own way. It had waited decades for someone who could understand and survive the creature inside. Now it had him. Jack also felt the weight of responsibility. The creature was not just a threat. It was a being of intelligence, emotion, and hunger. He had to respect it while containing it. He could not let fear guide him. Humans survived because they acted, not because they fled. He made plans to reinforce the core, improve containment, and prepare for any attempt by the creature to escape. The days blurred together. Jack worked, rested little, and listened to the whispers. Sometimes he felt the creature studying him, trying to understand why humans were different. He realized something important. It could manipulate fear, but humans had stubborn will, curiosity, and intelligence. These traits confused it, slowed it, and gave him an edge. He smiled faintly, knowing the galaxy had underestimated humans for too long. One night, as he rested, he heard the whispers again, softer now. Not angry, not fearful, but almost curious. He felt a connection, small and fragile, with the creature. It was aware of him, learning from him, and perhaps even respecting him in its own alien way. He drifted into sleep with a plan forming in his mind: containment, observation, and preparation. He would not flee. He would not panic. He would face what no other being had faced, and he would survive. He had discovered the terrifying secret of the Galactic cruiser. It was alive, it was dangerous, and it had been waiting for someone like him. The creature inside was a force beyond imagination, a threat that could destroy the galaxy if released. But Jack Carter was a human, clever, stubborn, and unafraid. He had passed the first true test. The rest of the battle, he knew, was only beginning. And somewhere deep inside the ship, the creature pulsed, waiting, aware, and learning about the human who dared to touch the core. It would remember him, and it would test him again. But for now, Jack had survived where countless others had failed. He had faced the ancient terror, and live Jack had survived the first encounter with the creature. He knew it was powerful, ancient, and intelligent. It could manipulate minds, spread fear, and destroy civilizations. But he was human, stubborn, clever, and adaptive. He had survived worse than whispers and shadows. Now he needed a plan, one that could contain the creature and keep the galaxy safe. He spent the first hours after discovering the creature studying the ship. The cruiser was enormous, filled with systems built by the old Galactic Alliance. Most were damaged, but some still worked. Life support, shields, engines, and energy conduits could be rerouted. Jack realized the ship itself could help him if he understood it. The ship had survived decades with the creature inside. It was alive in its own way, protecting the prison. He began by reinforcing the containment chamber. He used energy shields from the ship's main systems, rerouted power to stabilize the walls, and added additional barriers wherever he could. Every adjustment made the creature react. Whispers grew louder, pulsing in his mind, testing him. Jack felt fear, but he forced himself to stay calm. Humans survived by acting, not by panicking. He continued, layer by layer, until the chamber was stronger than before. Next, he tackled the monitoring system. He needed to know the creature's movements, emotions, and intentions. He connected sensors to every panel, every conduit, and every vent. He calibrated them to detect energy fluctuations, pulses, and psychic waves. The ship seemed to help, guiding him, opening pathways, and stabilizing circuits. Jack realized the ship wanted him to succeed. It had waited for someone human, someone clever enough to understand both the creature and the machine. Jack also began improvising weapons. He knew he could not destroy the creature, it was far too powerful, but he could create barriers and distractions. He built energy nets from old alien tech, reinforced them with human engineering, and tested their stability. He rigged panels to redirect energy pulses to different rooms, creating traps if the creature tried to escape. He worked tirelessly, focusing on one goal, survival and containment. Days passed. The creature reacted to every adjustment. Its whispers grew in intensity. Jack felt the pressure in his mind, but he resisted. He noticed patterns. When he was confident, it hesitated. When he panicked, it surged. He realized humans were unpredictable in ways the creature could not control. This gave him an advantage. He had survived not because he was stronger, but because he was clever and unafraid. One night, he decided to test communication. He focused on the container, sending thoughts of calm, curiosity, and understanding. The whispers softened, no longer attacking but observing. It was the first time the creature had not tried to dominate him. Jack understood that it was learning from him, just as he had learned from it. This mutual awareness gave him hope. Humans had faced impossible odds before, and they had always found a way. He then focused on the ship itself. Some corridors were unstable, doors shifted unexpectedly, and systems glitched. He realized the ship's consciousness, like the creature, was ancient and intelligent. It could respond to him if he understood it. He spoke aloud, explained his intentions, and made small adjustments. The ship responded, opening doors, stabilizing power, and guiding him to areas that needed repair. Jack was no longer alone. He had an ally, though not a human one. He spent days fortifying the core. He reinforced the container with alien tech and human engineering. He built multiple energy barriers and connected them to the ship's systems. He rerouted power to create redundancies. If one system failed, another would activate. He added alarms to alert him of any unusual activity. The creature tested every barrier, pulsing against shields and sending waves of psychic energy. Jack withstood it all. Humans had endurance, focus, and willpower. He relied on all three. Jack knew containment alone was not enough. The creature was intelligent, capable of learning, and highly adaptive. He needed a plan to neutralize its influence beyond the ship. He began working on a signal device, using the ship's communications array. The goal was not to communicate with the galaxy, but to warn humans if the creature escaped. He built redundancies, channels that could not be intercepted by alien sensors. Humans needed a warning system, even if it meant he would not survive. While working, he discovered more logs from the Alliance. They told stories of fleets destroyed, entire planets wiped out, and crews who went mad from fear. Jack read each entry carefully, learning tactics, mistakes, and containment strategies. He combined their knowledge with human ingenuity. Humans were adaptive, capable of improvising, and unpredictable. This was his advantage. He would not repeat their mistakes. One day, while testing the energy nets, the creature reacted violently. The chamber shook, lights flickered, and shadows stretched across the walls. Jack felt the pressure in his mind spike. It tried to manipulate his thoughts, to force fear to make him flee. He gritted his teeth and focused. His mind was clear, his heart steady. Humans survived by resisting despair. He pushed back, reinforcing the shields and activating the traps. The creature retreated slightly, unable to break through his will. Jack realized he needed to move beyond defense. He began planning controlled strikes against the creature if it tried to escape. He rigged corridors with energy pulses, redirected power to lock doors automatically, and set traps that could contain it temporarily. He did not plan to destroy it, nothing could, but he could guide it, control its movements, and protect the ship. Every adjustment made the creature more cautious. Jack smiled faintly. Humans were unpredictable, and that gave him an edge. As the days passed, he strengthened his connection with the ship. He learned which corridors were stable, which panels could be manipulated, and how energy flowed through the cruiser. He could predict how the creature would react. He set up layers of defense, from simple energy barriers to complex sensor networks. He was turning the cruiser into a fortress, using both human ingenuity and the ship's ancient systems. Jack also monitored the creature constantly. He watched its energy pulses, its psychic waves, and its reactions to his actions. He noted patterns. It attacked when it sensed fear, hesitated when met with confidence, and adapted slowly when tested. Humans were resilient, unpredictable, and stubborn. These qualities confused it, slowed it, and gave him time to plan. He realized this was his greatest advantage. He also prepared for the long term. He stocked supplies, repaired life support, and created safe zones within the ship. If containment failed, he needed areas to retreat, regroup, and reinforce defenses. Humans survived by planning, improvising, and never giving up. Jack was doing all three. One night, the whispers changed. They were not attacking, not fearful, not angry. They were curious. The creature was learning from him, observing his methods and testing his limits. Jack understood that humans were different. Fear did not control them. Intelligence, courage, and stubbornness allowed them to survive where others had failed. He smiled faintly. He had passed the first trials, and now he was shaping the future. He began experimenting with controlled interaction. He used energy pulses to push the creature back gently, testing its limits while maintaining full containment. He learned its behavior, anticipating its actions. Each interaction strengthened his control. Humans were masters of adaptation, and he proved it. He was teaching the creature, showing it boundaries, and enforcing them with calm precision. Days turned into weeks. Jack had transformed the cruiser. It was no longer just a prison. It was a fortress, a monitoring station, and a teaching ground. He had formed a fragile partnership with the ship and an understanding with the creature. It remained dangerous, powerful, and unpredictable, but it could not escape. He had human ingenuity on his side, and humans survived where others failed. Finally, he paused, looking at the core chamber. The creature pulsed softly, aware of him, learning from him, and respecting him in its own way. The whispers had softened. He had reinforced containment, prepared traps, and established a monitoring system for the galaxy. Humans had survived the impossible before. He would continue to survive. Jack Carter, a quiet human salvager, had faced the ancient terror and transformed it into a challenge he could manage. The ship, the creature, and the galaxy were watching. And humans had once again proven why they were unpredictable, dangerous, and unyielding. The battle was far from over, but for the first time he felt confident. Humans could survive anything, even a living nightmare trapped inside a galactic cruiser Jack had spent weeks preparing. The cruiser was no longer just a drifting ship. It was a fortress, a monitoring station, and a cage for the creature inside. He had strengthened containment barriers, created traps, and connected sensors to the ship's systems. He had learned its patterns, observed its behavior, and anticipated its moves. But he knew this was only temporary. The creature was ancient, intelligent, and powerful. It could not stay contained forever without constant vigilance. One morning, the whispers returned stronger than ever. They pulsed in his mind, filling him with fear, hunger, and confusion. The creature was testing him. It wanted to see if his control would fail. Jack took a deep breath, centering himself. Humans survived not because they were fearless, but because they could act despite fear. He focused, ignoring the waves of emotion, and activated the containment reinforcements. The ship shook as the creature reacted. Energy pulses flared in the corridors, alarms blared, and shadows stretched across walls. The creature pressed against the barriers, testing every weak point. Jack moved calmly, rerouting power, reinforcing shields, and activating traps. Every action he took forced the creature to retreat slightly, unable to break his will. Humans were resilient, clever, and unpredictable. This was his advantage. Jack decided to use the ship itself as part of the containment plan. He activated corridors to shift, doors to seal automatically, and energy conduits to redirect the creature's movements. He turned the cruiser into a labyrinth, guiding the creature into zones where it could be monitored and controlled. The creature tried to fight, but it had never faced a mind like Jack's before. His determination, intelligence, and stubbornness confused it. He tested the containment again. The creature pulsed, sending waves of psychic energy that threatened to overwhelm his mind. Jack focused, pushing back with willpower, keeping fear at bay. He activated an energy net that wrapped around the chamber, containing the pulses and redirecting them safely into the ship's systems. The creature screamed, not in voice but in pure psychic emotion. Jack held firm. Humans had survived impossible odds before, and he would survive this. Hours passed. Jack worked tirelessly, monitoring the creature, adjusting systems, and reinforcing barriers. He observed how it reacted to the ship, to traps, and to his mind. He began to understand it, predict it, and anticipate its movements. He realized that containment was more than barriers. It was strategy, adaptation, and constant vigilance. Humans excelled at strategy, and he was human. Suddenly, a section of the ship shuddered violently. The creature had found a weak point, a corridor not fully reinforced. Jack acted quickly, activating secondary barriers and rerouting power. The creature hit the shields but could not break through. He could feel its frustration and hunger. It pulsed, sending waves of fear, but he resisted. Humans survived because they acted with intelligence, not instinct. He decided it was time to test a new plan. He would use controlled energy pulses to push the creature back, guiding it into sections of the cruiser where containment was strongest. He activated conduits, channels, and traps. The creature pulsed violently, testing his limits. Jack remained calm, precise, and determined. He guided it through the labyrinth, anticipating every move. The battle lasted for hours, but Jack never faltered. The creature tried every tactic, from fear manipulation to psychic attacks. Jack countered each one with intelligence, adaptation, and focus. He moved with the ship, using corridors, energy conduits, and traps to his advantage. The creature pulsed, screamed, and tried to overwhelm him, but it could not. Humans were unpredictable, and he was relentless. Finally, he guided the creature into the core chamber. All barriers were fully reinforced, energy nets pulsing, and sensors monitoring every movement. He activated a full containment sequence, using the ship's power to create an unbreakable cage. The creature thrashed, sending waves of energy that shook the cruiser. Jack felt pressure in his mind, but he held firm. Humans survived by refusing to give in. He would not falter now. The creature pulsed one final time, then fell silent. The chamber glowed faintly, the energy nets stabilizing, the ship humming in quiet triumph. Jack breathed deeply, exhausted but victorious. He had contained the creature, survived its test, and proved that humans were clever, resilient, and fearless. The galaxy would never know the full horror it had avoided, but that was not his concern. Survival mattered more than recognition. He recorded every detail, every system adjustment, every observation. If the creature ever tried to escape again, humans would be ready. He built redundancies, safety zones, and warning signals to ensure the galaxy could be protected. He knew the creature was still alive, still intelligent, but it could not escape. The cruiser was now a fortress, and he was its guardian. Days passed as he stabilized the ship. He explored sections he had not seen before, repaired systems, and improved containment. The creature pulsed occasionally, testing him in small ways, but it remained trapped. He realized that humans were different from every other species that had faced it. Fear did not control them. Intelligence, stubbornness, and courage allowed them to survive. He smiled faintly, knowing the galaxy had underestimated humanity. Jack began to feel a strange connection with the ship and the creature. The ship had guided him, helped him, and protected the containment. The creature had tested him, learned from him, and adapted. He understood that the galaxy contained dangers humans could not yet imagine, but humans had the ability to adapt and survive. He was a living proof of that truth. He also prepared for the long term. He stocked supplies, repaired life support, and created safe zones within the cruiser. If containment failed, he would have areas to retreat, regroup, and reinforce systems. Humans survived by planning, improvising, and never giving up. Jack embodied all three qualities. Finally, he stood in the bridge, looking at the core chamber. The creature pulsed faintly, contained but aware. The ship hummed with life, a silent partner in his efforts. He realized that he had changed the galaxy's future without anyone knowing. Humans had faced an ancient terror and survived. They had proven that intelligence, courage, and stubbornness could overcome fear, manipulation, and power that had destroyed civilizations before. He sent a secure signal to human space, warning them of the creature, its containment, and the potential danger. He provided coordinates, systems, and advice for anyone who might face it in the future. The galaxy now had a chance, thanks to one human salvager who had refused to give in. Jack finally allowed himself to rest. The whispers were faint, the creature stable, and the ship calm. He had faced impossible odds, survived ancient terror, and turned a cursed ship into a fortress. Humans had once again proven why they were unpredictable, resilient, and dangerous to forces that underestimated them. As he drifted into sleep, he felt a quiet pride. He had survived where countless others had failed. He had contained a force that could have destroyed entire civilizations. And he had done it not with raw power, but with human ingenuity, courage, and willpower. The galaxy would never fully understand what he had done, but it did not matter. Survival, intelligence, and courage mattered most. Jack Carter, a quiet human salvager, had faced the ancient terror and won. The galactic cruiser, once abandoned and cursed, was now a symbol of human strength. The creature inside was still alive, still intelligent, but it would not escape. The galaxy had learned, without even knowing, that humans were a force to be reckoned with. And somewhere deep in the heart of the cruiser, the creature pulsed, aware and waiting. But it had learned one undeniable truth: humans were different. They did not break under fear, they adapted, they survived, and they could never be underestimated. Jack smiled faintly, closing his eyes. He had changed everything, not with firepower or fleets, but with mind, courage, and stubbornness. The galaxy would never forget humans again.